the real doll here? I don't know. We'll find out. Starting here with the IMDb plot. A young woman is abducted by a monstrous figure intent on raising her as her own child. Ugh, not good. um, yeah, all right. So, Dolly here. Interesting here. Like I said, kind of hinted at there. You can take it as this monstrous figure, is that Dolly, or is what she's, trying to do to this girl, making her Dolly, depending on how you want to wordplay there or take it. Um, Obviously we kind of think of this monstrous figure as Dolly, but, I kind of thought of it in that way. Um, Anyway, this is, another fairly new one here, so we'll try to be spoiler free, but I think, it is pretty much kind of straightforward, not really too many twists and turns here. Um, Saw, a lot of buzz, as I'm, doing my social media thing here, as this movie was coming out, so I was definitely intrigued on wanting to see it because of a lot of things that were being said about it. Um, and so forth. And, I would say that that kind of pushed up some of the expectations for it. And I would say, maybe at the end, um, based on some of the things that were saying that were said that I read, I would say, it might have fallen a little below those expectations, but, in a different way. But I'll kind of go through that here in a moment. But, let's talk a little bit more about what's happening here to start. We have a couple here who, is out in the woods, as we always do in the woods. I wish people would stay out of the woods, but they don't. Um, and, they're doing their thing, going through, and stumble upon a weird area here where there's, some dolls, some maybe toys, just an unusual scene here that, you probably wouldn't have expected to see, especially after, they kind of see, some of the other sights here in the woods, some great scenery and so forth. They probably wish they had seen Bambi, the good one, not the killer one that we just recently saw. And, maybe some other more friendly creatures out there, some birds and flowers and stuff. But instead, they stumble upon this, and as opposed to going, maybe this is not a good sign, and, let's vacate this area rather quickly. No, let's meander around and kind of see, what is really here. And, while not really paying attention, this rarely large person, they're apparently very quiet, whatever kind of sneaks up on them. And, yeah, is going to, um let's just say, hurt the guy pretty bad and take the woman. And takes the woman back to a house where she soon enough wakes up and strangely finds herself in a room and is almost being now treated as a baby, or a doll, whatever you want to take it as. And obviously she's terrified and freaked out and so forth, and obviously going to try to escape this situation, but it's not going to have a good time doing so. Um, from there, we just kind of, it is that situation. It is her in this house and with this strange person with a doll-like face on, and basically treating her as their doll slash baby, whichever one you want to choose to think she is. And, it's kind of up to her to kind of figure her way out of this situation. Like I said, not a whole lot of twists and turns, but, you're going to just kind of see her and her ways of trying to get out of this. And some, crazy stuff is going to happen in between. So I guess, as far as those expectations and so forth that I mentioned a moment ago, I guess, when seeing some of the stuff written, I kind of, without getting too much into watching trailers and stuff like that, I thought, they were kind of upping, Dolly, and I was thinking of her, or this figure, killing a bunch of people in that way, kind of, almost like our, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we're going to, Leatherface killing a bunch of people here, even though, he didn't kill as many as you would have thought, but still, an okay start. But I thought it was more of that kind of slasher that we were going to see, a little bit more deaths and kills and so forth than that. And, it really ends up being a limited amount. And I guess that was one of my biggest disappointments in the movie. I thought we were going to see, some deaths, and I expected that and was hoping for that. And then, in the end, there's just a lack thereof of that. However, on the flip side of that, it's not all disappointing. With what they do some pretty crazy scenes. Like I said, they're the man of the situation here, of the couple. He's gonna take it pretty bad. He's gonna take it pretty bad. And I would say some of that makes up for not having a lot of deaths, because what happens to him is not so great. Great to watch, but not so great for him. And there's probably another scene or two that were, kind of gross and nasty. This whole thing where Dolly kind of tried to baby or make a baby of this woman or doll, kind of reminded me in a weird way of Barbarian and what was trying to go on there. Just a random thought of this another person who just wants motherhood or whatever in a weird way. But yeah, there was definitely another scene or two that was a little gross and so forth, which also kind of helped. Again, kind of, my expectations were kind of ruined by wanting a lot of deaths. But was okay, kind of made up for that with some of the extreme that they went with some of the bodily injuries in this movie, and then a gross scene or two. I'm not going to tip that off. If you have not seen it, you can enjoy that or be grossed out of it, like I was. But was perfectly fine. It is a horror movie. We like it. We enjoy it. Do it again. Do it many times, as gross and disgusting as it is. Yeah, you can enjoy that. I'm not going to give away that what that was. You can enjoy that or hate me for it later and say, why didn't he warn me so that I didn't have to watch that? Yes, I'm that person who's not going to warn you. So mixed feelings there. Some good, some bad. It is. Let me see. It is only an hour and 23 minutes, which kind of seems about right because it kind of moves right on through. You have the couple there. They don't spend a whole lot of time there. You get a brief introduction to them, and then bam, she's kind of taken, and then it's just a matter of how the hell is she going to get out of the situation, and doesn't really need to be dragged on. So I think that I can kind of appreciate them keeping it simple, and so forth, and keeping it on, but basically ends up just being as Dolly and her, for the most part, and that's the most important part, and just, trying to get her out of the situation and not trying to make it too complicated. There's a slight surprise here or there, but, not a whole lot. Again, the flip side, I guess, they could have, maybe made the movie a little longer, dragged some other people out there and had them die, and I would have been fine with that as well. But, they wanted to keep it short and simple in the house and so forth, and okay, so, let's do it. So, yeah, I it doesn't look like a whole lot of people saw that were or at least rated this. Only about 1,500 or so here on IMDb as of this moment, and about a 5.2, and I would say that's probably where it is. Didn't even though I saw a lot of and spread a lot about it, as it came out, I guess it wasn't a huge release, but definitely one if you kind of stumble upon and you kind of maybe like something to get a little bit, painful and gross and so forth, maybe you want to get give it a look. If you're looking for something, with a twist and all that kind of stuff, probably not it, or not even it if you want looking for a lot of deaths like I was kind of hoping for. But I think I'm going to end up giving it 3 pools of blood, not because of an amazing story or, something totally different. We've kind of, like I mentioned, kind of seen a little bit of this in one way or the other before. But just, I thought it created, I'm good on the blood and guts and so forth. And if Dolly would have probably killed a few more people, and, I probably, in the similar manner to that, what she or he or whatever does here, I probably would have given him more, even, not even, it didn't even need a, grand plot or anything like that. You could have kept to the same plot, dragged a couple more people into it and just, killed them. And I probably would have given it 3.5 if you did it in a nice, painful way that you did, what you did here. But yeah, gonna give it 3 pools of blood. Largely, again, like I've said, I think on the last, maybe a couple of reviews that have, kind of had some death scenes or whatever. You're getting kind of a little slight bonus there. Not the most amazing film or whatever. It was probably deserving of a 2 or 2.5 because it's, kind of simple and we've seen it before. But because I enjoyed your disgustingness and your blood and painfulness that you've kind of done here, I'm going to give you 3 pools of blood. Reward you for it. We're doing a lot of rewarding these days of that kind of stuff. So we're in that kind of mode. For now, we'll see as the year goes on with these reviews. So yeah, it's gonna be 3 pools of blood out of 5 for Dolly, and just stay out of the forest. And if you see weird stuff like that, just move on quickly, like run. So with that, horrorreviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all of my reviews, written and video, written a long time ago. Lots of reviews by video of the last while now, so you can like and subscribe and do everything else that everybody wants to do here on YouTube. If not, no worries, it's okay. I thank you for your time regardless. Blue Sky and Facebook information down below. Feel free to reach out to me there. Venturing new on Blue Sky because Dolly needed to deal with X. And definitely in the comment section down below, feel free to comment if you did catch this movie. And maybe were you grossed out or not by some of those scenes. So with that, I will catch you on the next review, horror fans.